I would like to open this wonderful second stage here at Godot Fest now, and fittingly we also have two speakers here on the second stage. Sarah Spiers is the senior producer of Threadbare, which is an open source narrative adventure game. She is also a former development director at EA and part of the Forbes 30 under 30. She will show us why open source development practices matter for the future of our entire industry. Accompanying her is Will Thompson, who will showcase that game Threadbare, which is made by Enders Access, where he is an open source developer as well as digital inclusion enthusiast. Together they will showcase strategies, structures, challenges, and successes around building a project that is aimed at welcoming contributors at all skill levels. Please give a massive round of applause to Sarah and Will.
All right. Okay, thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to be talking to you today about collaborative game development. As mentioned, I'm Sarah, this is Will. We are 2/3 of the game development team at Endless Access. And if you're not familiar with Endless, we hope you are now. So we're a nonprofit that empowers underserved learners to unlock creativity, confidence, and real digital skills through community game making. So before we talk about that, I do want to set the stage. So this is the classic game industry problem. If you're familiar with the games industry at all, if you're ever on LinkedIn, you'll know that there is a real experience crisis, for lack of a better term. Entry level isn't really entry level. We see that there is an explicit or implicit requirement for 2 to 3 years of experience, which is not entry level. Like this right here is actually considered entry level work in a AAA studio. Schools that have game programs will churn out, thousands and thousands of students every year that don't have the skill set and professionalism they need to enter the industry. Meanwhile, we have studios with mismatched expectations. They're wanting students with, or even just entry-level folks outside of the games industry with super high skill sets, and they're not willing to or unable to put in the time and money to invest in their growth. Likewise, if you're coming from a different industry, your skill set might not necessarily be viewed in the same light as those from within games. I've seen CTOs of smaller companies with over 20 years of coding experience go through an application process at a AAA studio only for them to be labeled an SE2, which is basically one step above entry level. This is exacerbated by essentially privilege, right? So when you're getting experience, there's a lot left to, can you take on an internship while you're working or caretaking? Can you take on unpaid work? Are you located in an area that has game studios? And are those developers active in the community? Can you get a mentor? All of these factors can help make or break your career. And then, if you're even able to get into a program or get tools, not all of them are created equal. Folks interested in games are often directed or given tools that are not actually reflective of what's being used in the industry. And so they're put at a disadvantage to folks compared to folks who are actually using professional tools. And so when they're applying for work, they're going to get overlooked compared to people who are actually using tools that are reflective of what's in the industry. And let's say you're lucky enough to actually get some work. You may not even get credit on the game that you're working on. Interns, short-term contract workers, people doing work for hire and junior devs are often not credited in the games that they work on. I'm credited in maybe 50% of the games that I've worked on. And this can be really detrimental because some studios will require you to list the credits of the games you've worked on and provide proof. And then you won't have that because it's not listed on Moby Games or something. And that could be really detrimental to your long-term career. So, future of gaming. So just a little bit of a hint. So right now, the industry is pretty fraught. We're seeing AAA companies get bought out, merged, lay off thousands and thousands of people every year. Publishers are folding, or they're taking a really safe approach, and they're only funding folks that have a lot of experience in games or are sure bets. And then we see more people go into indie, which can be the answer for some, but it isn't the answer for everyone. It can be really stressful. They might not have the resources or mentorship they need to be successful. So what is another way that we can get folks interested and invested in games? Well, we think that there's another pathway, and that is open collaboration and community-built games. So this isn't necessarily going to replace the games industry as it is now, but we do think it is a solution. So anyone with a computer and internet access can join. There's no interview gauntlet. You're not asked to spend hours and hours and hours traveling and going to places specifically to maybe get a role. There's no specific unicorn skill set needed. Everyone is working together. They're not competing for one role. Labor is visible, celebrated, and credited. And most importantly, you have learning happening through making contributions to real projects with real tools with developers of a wide range of skill set. And the goal is to meet the community where they are while building something sustainable and amazing with one another. So at Endless, we're doing this in multiple ways. I'm going to take a moment to talk about our platform. If you want to know more, please come talk to us after. But we're building a platform where learners can, and anyone, can find collaboratively built games. You can contribute to them. Also, we have a way for people to gain experience, achievements, and even micro-credentials to showcase the work that they've been completing and demonstrate how their work translates to real-world skills. And each user on the platform has a profile that showcases the work that they're doing and can demonstrate to others that they are a resource if you need help or mentorship. But in order to make that successful, we do need collaborative games.
So let's talk about the collaborative game we're making. We're making Threadbare, which is a top-down action adventure. It's got a mixture of mechanics. It's built around the theme of storytelling. So the world is coming apart at the seams, and it's through sharing stories with one another that we can weave it back together. We're trying to make a game that is fun and high quality, but actually I'm going to focus here less on the game itself and more on how we've structured the game to allow people to contribute at a variety of levels. It's a game as well as an open source project, as well as a learning tool. So it has to try and serve all these goals at once. For starters, public everything, public repo, public issue tracker, you saw our workboard earlier, public Discord, and so on. Our backlog is in the open, and we triage it pretty carefully as best we can, with tagging things with the skills you need to complete these tasks and the XP that you would earn by doing so. Our educator colleagues, some of whom are here today, develop curricula around this game. So there's different contribution paths at different skill levels and different time commitments, and we run programs around these in partnership with universities and other institutions and publish these curricula so people can do self-guided learning around this. And we value all kinds of contributions, not just stuff that directly impacts the game that a player sees. So concept art, playtesting, bug reports, level designs on paper, all these things are valued and valid. The game is built around quests, the gameplay that is, and the main plot of the game is told through lore quests. So if you talk to the person on the left, they offer you this storybook. By the way, the book was drawn by a learner, and you play through the kind of main plot of the game. But if you talk to the other elder, they give you what we call story quests, which are quests that exist outside the main narrative of the game. So this is designed to give creative freedom to teams of learners who are building these games. And we've tried to structure the game's internals so that new contributors who don't have much experience with Godot can still make something cool. For example, we have template scenes for the different challenge mechanics that we have in the game. So people can pick and choose the mechanics they want to tell their story, and they have an already working scene that they can build on and adapt as they need. We lean a lot on the animation player and on the Godot Dialogue Manager add-on, which together with these and the templates and components we provide, it means you can do a lot and tell a lot of great stories without writing code. Although, of course, if you do write code, you can do more. There's too much to show you everything now, but here's a quick preview of 3 of the story quests which are in the game upstream. This is the Lost Toy. It's sort of fan fiction. It is using a mixture of our protagonist and some original assets and telling sort of another story that they might go on. Then there's this is Nora and the Impossible Homework, and it's about a slightly surreal story about a student's academic struggle. And I hope that it's not based on their experience contributing to our game. It has some custom logic to change how the combat mechanic works compared to the base game. Then Sueños Nocturnos is a story of a child's nightmare. It's very dark, visually and tonally, with lots of handmade art, cutscenes, and custom logic, though still building on the scaffolding of what we've provided in the base game. and many, many more, stuff from Peruvian wildlife and legend, through what happens when technology and culture collides, to a sci-fi story in a devastated world. Yeah, I could spend the whole session just showcasing stuff, but we should talk about what we've learned. So, anyone can learn Godot. It's a professional level tool, so it's obviously harder to use than MakeCode or other tools which are designed specifically for learners. But that's the point of what we're doing. We're trying to bring people to the tools that are actually used in the industry. And learners aren't starting from a blank page here. They've got a working game with templates, they have structured guides, and they have mentorship. So they can focus on building out the skills they need to tell the stories that they want to tell. And Godot itself runs on pretty much anything. I do all my development on a 6-year-old laptop, and it's almost overpowered, particularly for the genre of game we're building. So we are really indebted to the person, decades or centuries, that have gone into making and giving away Godot for free. Without it, we couldn't run these programs. So thank you to everyone who's built Godot. And young people are very excited by the concept of a game that's built by a combination of pros and other young people like them. So they come up with all kinds of ideas in this world. Here are some assets made by learners in one of our short introductory workshops. And people come back for more. So we had someone who took the task of drawing concept art for a new enemy and is now developing it from concept art through animations into an enemy that actually functions in the game itself. People draw props, people make new scenes, remixing the elements we have, and so on. What has worked well? Playable documentation has worked well. I'll say nothing more because the next talk in this room is about playable documentation, so I will move to a seat, and I'm sure they'll say all the things I would have said here anyway. Some things didn't go quite as we expected, so it's hard to anticipate ahead of time what learners are going to want to customize and adapt in their games. Before we started working on Threadbare, we had built some moddable mini games which implement familiar games such as Pong with a large number of parameters that you can tweak to experiment with changing the rules of your game. And so this led us down the path of doing something similar, having shared scenes where your levels are built out of instances just of these common scenes with a set of manually exported properties for the things that you might want to customize. So here we had, okay, you just drag a new texture in and then your paddle changes, and we provided stock textures. So when it came to Threadbare, we have a player scene, and there's one scene instantiated in all those quests that you saw with various parameters, including a sprite frames resource. And as long as you provide the right animations, you can just drop in new textures even into the sprite frames resource and customize your player, which works great if your player has the same proportions as our player. If it doesn't, and you realize, okay, this is not really fitting, and it's really tempting to click through into the shared player scene and just rearrange the scene to suit the game that you're laser focused on building, which can have some quite funny side effects when you go back to the main game and the player is really tiny. So learners surprise us with their creativity every week, and we've found that in some ways too much scaffolding can become a constraint on what they can achieve. Some aspects of how Godot works, which are there for a reason, are very confusing to newcomers. The way that resources are shared is surprising. Duplicating a path, not duplicating its curve, is really surprising. But then things which to me seem logical, where if you duplicate a scene, it doesn't duplicate all the external resources that scene refers to, which is the behavior that you want, but if in general. But if you're not expecting that, it's very easy to just do the simple thing of, okay, I want different tiles in this level, I'll just edit the tile set, and surprise, you've now changed the tiles throughout the game. So we're moving in the direction of, rather than having shared scenes, having duplicated scenes with shared scripts, components, and so on. Plus, for the special case of building a quest, we have a recursive duplicator tool that duplicates everything and relinks it properly within the boundary of the templates we provide. And we've also found that a 3-act quest is a lot of work, both for the people building the quest, and also for us reviewing the quest when it's submitted to us. We can talk about some of the specific issues with that in a moment, but we found that in some of our follow-on programs, when we have smaller self-contained changes being submitted incrementally, that flows very, very smoothly. So the direction we have to move in here is to be flexible about the scale of a quest. Not all quests need to be a 3-act story. You can tell, maybe you can have one or even just a cutscene might be enough in some cases to tell the story you want to tell. We need to find ways to enable people and encourage people to send their work to us incrementally, so it's a smaller amount of work for us to look at, and it's less rework to do if something needs to change or they need to change the approach they're doing something to fit it with the game at large. In the future, we probably need to find a model where quests don't have to live in our source tree, but can live somewhere else. This introduces kind of API compatibility problems that the project's at a bit young stage now for that to really work well, but I think it's something that needs to happen as the number of people working around the project goes up. Version control is a very, very powerful tool, is essential, but it's yet another thing with a steep learning curve, particularly when you're learning lots of other new tools. For us, it's a particularly hard problem because in essence, we have a small number of full-time maintainers of the game, plus hundreds of people all working around the same project. So I could fill a whole talk with this, but instead I will say that Ink and Switch are working on a plugin to add version control to the editor with live synchronization of branches between different collaborators. As a sort of sneak preview, you get merge previews. When you go to merge a branch, it highlights what in the scene has changed, both breaking down a property and highlighting it in the scene. This is very, very cool technology. Paul, Nikita, and Lilith are here at the conference. I recommend you talk to them and take a look at this. Licenses, I am the license police. I'm kind of used to licenses that look a bit like this. It's sort of lots and pages of legalese, or you have summaries. But the nice thing about these is there's a small number of licenses which are widely understood. People who are into this stuff know you can mix and match assets or code under these licenses that are compatible with one another. In the games world, this is this incredible ecosystem of amazing free assets, but the kind of approach people take to licensing is very different to the broader open source ecosystem. So, for example, we see a lot of licenses which are kind of vague. People write their own licenses, and often those licenses say that you're free to use your assets in commercial games. You can redistribute them, modify them as you wish, but what you can't do is redistribute them in a form that other people can take the assets and use them themselves. We are an open source project, so if we take an asset pack which forbids redistribution and put it into our repo, we are redistributing their assets. So a surprising consequence of being open source is we actually have less freedom in which free assets we can use. And it would be easy to say to learners, great, okay, you can use anything as long as it's under Creative Commons attribution share alike. The problem is we find that often people tag their asset packs as being under such a license, but then write license terms saying you may not redistribute the assets. So, this is basically, I think, a kind of culture clash of how people are approaching licensing, and I don't have a good answer for this. If you do, I'd love to hear it. Zooming out a little bit, we are taking people on a journey from being a player, through being a learner, from being a contributor, and potentially to becoming a core developer of this game or other games. And there's things that we have to do to enable people to actually go on that journey. Sort of table stakes is that to have players, of course, the game must be publicly playable, even during development. Fine, not controversial. For people to learn from the game must be open source. For people to actually be able to contribute to the game, it's not enough for the game to be open source. We have to be actively encouraging and supporting people to make those contributions, particularly if they're not familiar with those kind of workflows. And then if people are going to be involved in some of the more core decisions about the game, then we have to be working in the open as far as we can for these things. With the ideation and design, maybe not every conversation can happen in a public Discord call or something, but we need to at least document the decisions we've taken and why, so that people know the kind of background to some of the elements of the game. The more we've done on this, we haven't got this perfect by any means, but we've found that in the cases where we have gone further along the kind of yellow axis, people have been able to make more impactful and meaningful contributions to our game. So, your turn. You can follow a similar journey, right? First of all, we'd love you to try Threadbare. It's quite early in development, but still already pretty fun. You can play it in a browser, or you can check it out from Git and enjoy it in the comfort of your own editor. We'd like to encourage you to share your expertise with the next generation of game makers. We have on our website various resources you could use to run some of our programs yourself, or join our Discord and directly act as a voice of a great expertise in whatever your discipline is in our community. And then, thinking bigger, maybe you could consider making your next game a community-built game. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. We now have 5 more minutes for a quick Q&A. If any of you have any questions for Sarah and Will, raise your hand. I'll go around with the mic. Otherwise, I could also... Yes.
Thank you so much for the talk. How do you scope the story or the features that go into the game? Do you do that as community work as well? Do you have collaborative modeling about that? Or is somebody in the company responsible for making decision what goes in and what goes out?
Great question. I think so. The model we have is that we are like owning the creative direction of the game, and so what systems the game needs flows from that. With the escape valve, right? If people need some different mechanics in their quest, they are free to build them. But move the openness earlier in the process. What we're trying to do is to at least have the decisions we've taken be public and why we have made those decisions. And when we're not sure, open that to discussion and input from the community.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would like to also add, our creative director is here in the audience, so feel free to talk to him. But yeah, so since we are making an RPG, there's like some core elements that we want to make sure that we include in the game. What we do specifically, like with narrative, for example, in quests, is we're putting together essentially a narrative vision for this project and general storyline of where we would like things to go, but leaving the actual execution of the way that the character moves through the game and achieves those, that's open to contributors. So if you find a quest or something you're really interested in, you and a bunch of other people can actually bring that to life in a way that's, very interesting, specific to you, but also still honors the overall vision of the game. Mm-hmm.
And then that will be it for the Q&A. Thank you again so much to both of you. As was just mentioned, as Will just said, the next talk will be here at 12:30. Gyms, News, and Museums. Your documentation should be in-game. Maybe I'll see you again in the room then. And with that, I would ask for another round of applause for Sarah and Will. Thank you.